Oh, great. I love that little recording in progress. Okay, so we're here with Bethany Goodwill, who is a poet, a producer, an events host, a performer, and my friend who I've known for a long time. So it's lovely to have her here and see her lovely little face and ask her some random questions. For some reason, I put as my first question favorite Radiohead song, but it feels like that's not the right first question. But if you want to answer and you're ready, then go for it.
Oh, that is such a hard
Very
question.
poetry related.
Um, I mean, I can give you like my favorite albums.
Yeah, album, yeah, yeah.
So probably Amnesiac,
Yeah, okay.
Rainbows, and OK Computer.
Okay,
But
great. Yeah.
I
So I
don't think
feel
they
like
have a bad album though. I don't think
no,
there's one.
no, honestly, they don't. And I actually quite like In Rainbows as well. So basically, together we like all their albums. I feel like they work together as albums, and it's like that's why it's hard to pick a song. It's kind of like that cliche of like Pink Floyd of like, oh, have you listened to the whole album? Which is great. We did have a little chat about Radiohead's weird stance on certain issues. So when someone came to their concert and they said Free Palestine, he was like, "Why would you say that here?" It was a really weird way of belittling this person. It was like and then it was like, well, where would he say it? Like it just his response didn't make any sense. So what do you think of Radiohead sort of taking that weird stance, phrasing it like that, and then what do you think of how sort of people have responded in general?
So I find it really irritating actually. Well, there are a couple of things I find irritating, and I was saying this to you the other day that I think it is in some ways it is wrong to just demand that famous people give you their take whenever
Mm.
you feel like asking them. Like if someone came up to me in the street and said, "What do you think about what's happening in Gaza?" out of nowhere, I probably wouldn't be able to put my thoughts coherently
Yeah.
just in the moment like that. On the
Sorry,
other
I'm
hand,
so sorry to interrupt. Like, I really don't mean to interrupt, but have you seen that video where someone's like, "What gender are you?" And he's like, "I just got here," and
yeah,
the alien edit. But anyway, sorry.
that's how I feel about my gender too. So
Same, yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I do think that we should be asking people who are famous and powerful, who
Hmm.
have a lot of cultural capital, if that's the right way of saying it. I think we should be asking them what they think because they have the power to influence what people are thinking about and how they're thinking about things.
Hmm.
Um, and I find it really irritating when bands who claim to be politically engaged or they make artwork that's politically engaged in some way when they refuse to comment on things like this. I think, why though? Because your whole career you've spent, I mean, Radiohead did an entire album which was like basically slagging off George W. Bush and
Hmm.
the Iraq War and things like that. So don't tell me after doing that that you don't want to touch that subject. You
Yeah.
know, it's a difficult subject to talk about. um, I understand that, but I don't. I kind of. I feel like they owe us something, but I also feel like I can understand why they think they don't owe us anything. That
Yeah.
they're making art, they can make art however they want, but I do think this sort of like, oh, both sides are as bad as each other, like hand wringing,
Yeah.
is it just doesn't get us anywhere, and it's a bit wet, if I'm honest. It's
I
like
hate I hate that both sides thing. Like I feel like in any modern debate, that both sides thing has really dragged the situation down. Like you're not saying both sides. What you're saying is you don't care about either side, maybe, or you're out for yourself, or you're an idiot, or something. But you're not, you're
if you
not
don't
saying both
care, just say
sides.
that. Just say that you don't care. Like don't
Yeah.
do the whole like don't act like you care and you don't. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's the worst.
if you don't care, just come out and say it. Like, why are you ashamed of it if that's how you feel?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
just be,
that's true actually. Yeah. Or just say like, I don't know. Like I realized I just am gonna say in so many situations like, oh sorry, I don't know or I don't understand that. And I feel like people could get out of so many sticky situations if they just say, sorry, I really don't understand. But
yeah. I think that's been a big part of growing up for me has been realizing that I don't need to have an opinion on everything, and it's okay, and it's not a bad thing to say I don't actually know a lot about that, or can I get back to you? you know what I mean? Like, there's no shame in admitting that you don't know something, or that maybe you were wrong about something. Because I've had plenty of discussions with people where I've gone in having a really strong opinion about something, and they've raised uh, decent points with me that have made me think about things in a different way. And I don't think that we should be ashamed of being wrong or changing our minds about things. And I think that you push people away from wanting to engage with you when you kind of like have a really inflexible viewpoint.
Yeah, that's true, actually. And I kind of used to think about myself like I used to be a lot more like, I don't know, shouty, I want to say. And I'm not saying that's bad, but then I saw other people kind of being like that. And I could see that they weren't actually convincing the other party. They were just getting them to be quiet in the moment and then go and vote reform later. So then that kind of like made me rethink how I did that. And I think we also touched on the fact that, oh my God, I'm going to Jordan Peterson it, but like psychopathic personalities, some of them that we may have encountered or we may have not,
Mm.
pick things to go online and then be like, oh, I really care about this, I really care about that, but they're just using it to bully whoever might be on the other end that they have an issue with, who said no to a date or who said no to a romantic advance or who looked at them funny or who they just want to bully on that day. So I kind of think you need to be wary of people sadly also adopting your cause for personal gain. It seems like really sick.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that social media has really impacted the way that people engage with each other. I don't think people seem to be less and less capable all the time of engaging with each other in a sincere way, and not in a kind of ironic way where it becomes about being funny on the internet, or point scoring in some way. And
100%.
I really fell down the rabbit hole in my 20s of being frankly really addicted to social media. Um, and I had to come off Facebook because I found that I was just addicted to it. I was addicted to being angry online and posting a lot of really angry political rants and things like that. And I
Mm.
think that has its place. I think that
Mm.
putting your thoughts out there like that has the capacity to make people think about things or reconsider things.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was just me being a bit mental, and seeking validation from outside,
Mm.
and from people on social media, which I think is a quite a toxic way to behave. And I'm really glad that I really restrict my social media use now.
Yeah, I kind of see that in myself. I kind of like, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't actually help to rant at people online. And I always think to myself, don't post, like, or post if you have to. But then sometimes I think we're kind of sucked back in because of work,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a tough one. So we also talked about the fact that there's sort of like a liberal sect that accepts everything but Muslim. But it's like really quiet about it. And then it's just kind of like a rehashing of an old colonial standpoint of like, yeah, you're okay and your views are great and everything, but ultimately we are better than you, and then we sort of just need to just get rid of you somehow by death or by movement or by suppression, and then we can just come and fix it because we are liberal and everything, but we are also the old colonial masters.
yeah. I see that a lot in. I want to say that the Medway poetry scene is a bit different in that way,
I think it is actually, yeah.
but especially when you when you go to some events, it's very white, very middle class. People are people of a certain sort of age bracket as well. Depending on what part of Kent you're in, you either have kind of like people in their 50s and 60s,
Mm.
or you have students. There doesn't really seem to be. I find most events I go to, it's like one or the other, and I don't think either of those are bad. And I go to a lot of poetry events with very varied audiences, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that people know that they can't be openly racist because that's bad. But I think that to each other and to themselves, they still are in some ways. And
Yeah.
I notice it a lot, like people just making kind of snide comments, or um, this isn't even at poetry. This is just in life generally. I think racism hasn't gone anywhere. People are
Yeah.
just quieter about it, or that it's a more insidious form of racism. And
Yeah.
sometimes because I'm white, people will say things to me thinking that I'll automatically agree with them. And it
That
puts me
must
in
be
that
horrible. That must be
yeah,
horrible.
it puts me in a very uncomfortable position, especially in like a work setting. I've come across people in various jobs I've done who are quietly very racist and very Islamophobic,
Hmm.
very homophobic as well. And I find that really difficult to deal with because you don't want to be the person who kicks up a stink and um, loses your
Yeah.
job because you
Yeah.
have bills to pay, but you also don't want to sanction that sort of behaviour by not saying anything.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult to tread that line of calling out poor behaviour, but I find actually the best way to deal with people like that is not to get angry at them, but to kind of say, well, why would you say that, or what made you think that that was an acceptable thing to say out loud?
It's like dealing with a toddler, like, oh, okay, you know.
You have to like gentle parent them into
Yeah.
why they're being a dick, which is
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I think sometimes we and I underestimate the fact that when you're put in that awkward position in a workplace of do I keep my job, eat, and keep my rent going, or do I stand up? It's actually a really difficult position to be in, and it's not always the kind of slogan or the I don't know, noble fight, classic fight that you would think it is. So yeah, that is interesting.
I think I've reached a point at my current job where people um, know who I am, they know what I believe in, and I think that
Yeah.
none of them would be stupid enough to say if they do feel that way. None of them would be stupid enough to say it to me because they know the kind of response they would receive to that. So
Yeah,
that's
that's very true. Sometimes I feel like it would be wonderful to be considered just an asshole, just an asshole on my own merit. Like that's set and she's an asshole, and there doesn't have to be a thing of like, oh, but they're all like that, or oh well, if you don't like it here, go back. You go back to where you came from and stuff. And it's like I'm not even trying to make it about myself because there'll be things in your life that work in the same dynamic, but I've had it kind of in the last few years, maybe from like two friends or something. And it's like, well, if you don't like it, go back to where you came from. And it's like, well, first of all, where did anyone come from? And secondly, there shouldn't just be that fallback of like, I am allowed to criticize my environment and be miserable about it as much as anyone else. But
I completely agree, and that doesn't mean that
yeah,
you should go back to anywhere. And
yeah,
I find that so hard to say it to people who were literally born in this country. Like, do you want me to go back to the hospital?
yeah.
Where do you want me to go back to? Because that's that's where I came from.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I feel like we also talked about the fact that there's a school of thought that feels like LGBT belongs to the West, and it's always incredible to share the fact that, there are Arab trans people, there are Arab gay people, there are Arab queer people, and it's always a mind-blowing thing. So I just wonder where that came from, that belonging to the West thing, probably because of the laws that we brought in, like same-sex marriage and stuff, but it still doesn't mean that people from other places aren't gay. How did you come into the poetry scene? Just pretend you don't know me.
I started writing poetry when I was really little. So
Yeah.
my parents read to me a lot, and
Yeah.
I had a lot of books growing up. Um, I didn't really have very many friends as a child, and I got bullied quite badly in school. So for me, reading and writing was a real form of escapism.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was older that I kind of found a poetry scene. Me and David, my partner, moved to Kent 10 years ago this year.
Oh wow, it's been a long time now.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But it wasn't until we moved to Medway that we really
Yeah.
found that there was stuff happening because there didn't
Yeah.
really seem to be a hugely active scene in Canterbury while we were living there. But we moved to Medway in 2017, and it was actually through meeting you and Angela that we
Yeah.
got into the Kent poetry scene and the events that you used to run in Faversham that we went to. And
They were
from those,
terrible. They were really
oh no,
terrible.
they were great fun. I have such fond memories of them.
Oh, God. Yeah, me and Angela getting more and more drunk.
I
Do
loved
you,
it.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Do you think there is sort of like a pre-existing pot of creativity inside a person, for want of a better phrase, that can express itself in poetry? Or do you think that poetry itself, i.e., the craft, the words, are in you and then they come out? Does that
That's a
make sense?
really difficult question. I think everyone has it in them to write a poem.
Yeah.
I think everyone has those words in them, but it's
Mm.
knowing how to use them and knowing that you want to use them.
Yeah.
But so many people say to me, oh, I don't get poetry. And I think, what is there to get?
There's nothing to get. Just take whatever you want from it. Don't let anyone tell you what it is.
I think people have had bad experiences of bad teachers in school who
Oh
didn't
yeah.
fill them with enthusiasm for the subject, and so they've kind of written it off as something that they are not interested in. But
Yeah.
I do think everyone has the capacity for creativity. I don't think that you have to be born with some kind of natural aptitude for it or a natural talent. I think everyone has it in them to write a poem or to make a painting.
Yeah.
I just think that we censor ourselves and we make something and go, oh, that's not good enough. But who decides what's good enough? If it makes you happy and you feel like joy from bringing something like that into existence, then
Mm.
what other people think doesn't really matter. So
Yeah. You wouldn't go to the park and say, "Oh, I don't really know what I meant to get from this." You would just go there, sit down, have a picnic, enjoy the sun and then come home. I think it's kind of the same thing. Not that it's always that transient, but I think you can just take whatever you want to take as an individual, and that is valid, isn't it?
yeah, and people project their own experiences onto art all the time. I mean, how
So
many
true.
times do we listen to a song and think, oh, this really sums up how I feel about something or somebody?
Mm.
Poetry can be like that. You can interpret it in however many different ways there are to interpret it. Um,
Yeah.
and it does, there's no kind of like correct way of interpreting a poem, I don't think. There's
Yeah.
no correct academic way to interpret something and all of the other ways are invalid or wrong. That's not really how it
Mm.
works. So
Yeah, I used to feel like I have poetry in me. Now I feel like I've got something in me, and I'm just still trying to work out what that something is. Also, off topic, have you ever tried this app called Randonautica?
I've never heard of it. What is it?
Oh my God, okay. So during lockdown, some people made this app and it's like gives you these random locations to discover. And it got famous because some kids went out and found a dead body, and
Oh,
some other kids went out, and as they were looking around, some guy got shot near them. And loads of other things like that have happened. Really, really weird stuff. Police had to get called and it was in the news and everything. And it's meant to be this like, it's bullshit, quantum interface app where you think of the devil or something and then you end up there. But I don't know. It's like basically a spooky, macabre Pokemon Go during lockdown thing. I tried it the other day and I thought, witch? Like I was thinking witch, like Blair Witch. I don't know what I was thinking. It gave me a pin in Ramsgate Cemetery. So I went there and then there was like a little hole and it was like completely pitch black. And I was like, no, that's as far as I'm gonna go. But anyway, yeah, you should check it out if you want to.
that sounds like my
Yeah.
right up my street, like psychogeographical.
Yeah. But then when I was trying to sleep, I kept ending up back in the cemetery, but I'm insane, so that's that.
I
Okay.
love I love that.
Yeah. I love that for you. Yeah. No, that's good.
I love you just the way you are. So
Oh, okay. Likewise, likewise. What was it like supporting John McCullough? Can you tell us about that gig?
oh, that was probably one of the best gigs I've been asked to do in recent times. I was really chuffed to have been asked because I love John's poetry.
Yeah, same.
Um, and it was nice because I feel like the poetry that we write is not similar at all. Um, and so that meant that we kind of bounced off each other differently. But it's always a joy to see John and to speak to him after gigs. I've had the pleasure of meeting him twice, and he's just so kind and engaging.
Hmm.
Such a knowledgeable person as well.
Refreshingly positive person, yeah.
Yeah, and he knows so much about poetry, obviously,
Yeah,
being
I love that.
a lecturer, but he's just great to talk to and bounce ideas off.
Mm.
Um, that was a really enjoyable gig.
Yeah, wonderful. Could you tell me a bit about Big Trouble? How was it named? Do you have a favorite gig? What poets would you like to feature?
Oh wow! So we started Big Trouble in 2018, and it was at a cafe in Rochester called.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So it was Big Trouble at Little Rock, and then Little Rock got shut down. I think they had problems with the electrics in the building. I feel like I heard that the guy like who ran it called an electrician out, and he's basically said you need to shut this place down immediately because it's not safe to be open. Um, which was a real shame. And then we moved to our current location, 12 Degrees in Rochester, but we decided to keep the name because we'd already established kind of a following under that name. So that's where that comes from. I wouldn't say I have a favourite gig because every single one of them just ends up being really fun, and we seem to have a lot of people we've never met before who come.
That's really good.
And then we might not see them again for months, and then they'll come again, which is nice. We've had quite a few people get up during the open mic and say, I've never read a poem out loud before. So those are always really nice because I feel like part of somebody's journey as a poet or a writer when they feel like they can share that at our event. That's really special to me. We've got Connor Sansby and Tom Sastry on June the 26th.
Yeah, that looks really good.
And then in September, we have Elora Sutton and Susannah Dickey, and I'm really excited about that. I read Susannah Dickey's book Isdal last year, which is about the Isdal woman. I don't know if you know about that, but in the 1970s, a woman was found shot dead in a hotel room in Norway, and she's never been identified. Yeah, this lady was basically seen by witnesses being dragged up a hillside by two men, and she was then set on fire. She was never identified. But there are so many wild theories about who she was. And so Susannah's book is about our kind of like fascination with true crime and whether that's an ethical fascination to have. Because the BBC did a podcast about the Isdal woman a few years ago, which I listened to, and she's kind of making fun of the fact that we have these jolly, light-hearted podcasts where everyone's having a nice laugh about someone who was brutally murdered and who is still unnamed. But the way she writes is so like tight. Everything, there's no word that is spared. Everything is just perfect.
I love that. Do you know what? I love that in books. I'm guessing it's prose that you're talking about.
So it's poetry, but all of them function as one thing as well as individual pieces of the story. I can't do justice actually to how good it is, but yeah, I'm really excited to have her come in September.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll definitely try and come to that. I know exactly what you mean about that quality. I've noticed it in books and I absolutely love it, where literally one word is not out of place. And I'm thinking of The Bell Jar. I'm thinking The Lover. Is it Margaret Duras? Those books, you know them when you get them because it's like, yeah, that was it. And I so wish I could write like a novella or something like that, but I don't think I could, maybe one day, yeah.
Quite tight as a drum, it's perfect. Like that's the only way I can describe it, as being just perfect and perfectly crafted.
And it feels so gorgeous to consume, doesn't it? It's like you take it on, you're like, oh my God, this book, it just made me feel something. How was your time at Kent Uni and what did you study? I know that's where we met and we were there at the same time, I think maybe, so yeah.
So my course was a master's called The Contemporary, which is a really vague and stupid name in some ways. But it was contemporary art, contemporary literature, and contemporary culture. So you had one contemporary module, which was like the mandatory one that you had to take, which was called The Contemporary. And that covered a lot of poetry, a lot of literature. And then you had kind of free reign to choose from any of the others. So I did a module in post-colonial studies. And I did a couple of art ones as well, kind of like art criticism. But I wrote my thesis about how memes are a form of political engagement.
Yeah, I remember this, yeah.
Yeah, and how, people like memed Donald Trump into the White House for the first time. Obviously, when I was writing it, I didn't know that that he was going to be president for a second time, which is just insane to think about. But I enjoyed my time there. I was a very different person then. I think it was sort of pre-therapy, so I was still very fixated on the idea of being liked by people. So I could be quite extroverted and quite gregarious, but at the same time suffered from crippling anxiety about whether I was upsetting people by being the way that I was, if that makes sense. And I think having gone through therapy and then finding out that I'm autistic, it all kind of makes sense why would fixate on social interactions, but I was also just obsessed. I wanted people to like me because I didn't like myself.
Yeah.
So I think if I could go back now, I would enjoy it a lot more because I feel a lot more secure in myself and a lot more um, like I have the emotional bandwidth to be giving it my all a bit more and to be more interested in things because I'm not constantly looking inwards and going, oh, should I have said that? Did I upset this person? You know what I mean? I don't really care
Yeah.
what people think of me
Yeah.
anymore, and so I don't have that social pressure of university.
It
So
always kills me when I look back because I just think, oh, like, damn, bitch, like, go get it, like, go get life, stop worrying about stuff. But when you're in it, you're just so anxious and you're worried about people that you care about, people that you love, family, whatever your circumstances are, money, etc. Now looking back, I just think, fuck everything. Just go and live your life, make money, be happy, study. But I suppose I need to think of myself in the future saying that about me now.
you never stop changing, do you? You never stop growing as a person. So
Yeah.
I'll probably look back on this period of my life and roll my eyes one day, but um, it's just, yeah, I think university came at the wrong time of my life. I think I would enjoy it a lot more if I could go back now because I wouldn't have that added pressure of socializing and caring about what other people think. I would just kind of do my own thing.
But do
Um,
you find that the world is quite punishing of a person that doesn't care what people think of them? Is not even necessarily extroverted about it, but just genuinely does not care what people think about them. That can feel quite threatening to people, depending on, who's around you. And I think people can punish that, whether consciously or subconsciously.
yeah, I have come across a few people in my life who seem to have made it their mission to absolutely crush that out of me.
Mm.
And I think the reason I feel so committed to being myself and to um, having that joy of being myself and not caring is because of the kind of things that happened in my early life where I didn't realize I was different until I went to school and got bullied relentlessly for the whole time I was in school for being weird and ugly, which is just crazy to me that people thought it was okay to do that to me. I
It's
don't.
horrendous. I have similar experiences, and I just remember always feeling horrible, ugly, unprotected, no one on my side, things like that. And I know it's not about how you look and stuff cosmetically or anything like that, but I do also think, just as a side note, it's insane to call a beautiful person ugly or anything like that, or even make it about physicality.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way I look doesn't define my worth.
No, or anyone, yeah.
Nobody's beauty does, and I think it's going to sound really cheesy, and I don't really care because it's true. But I think most people are beautiful in some way. I think you can look
Hmm.
at a person and see something beautiful about them. And I think if you are at a point in your life where your life is so joyless and grey that you can't do that, then I feel bad for you. Because I see wherever I look, I see beautiful things and beautiful people because that's what I'm looking for. Um,
That's going to be the quote of this podcast.
I think if you're
No,
just looking for
I
like
see.
misery and shit, that's all you're going to find. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's so true. And that's no way to live. You'll soon feel like you don't want to live anymore if that's the case. But 100% agree with you that I see beauty in most people and just in things. Yeah, just in awe of going around, walking around, sunshine, plants, the sea. Like you say, it sounds cheesy, but I feel like I love life and I feel like you love life too.
I do. I love being alive. And after so many years of hating myself and not wanting to be on this planet because I was different and I didn't know why, and other people were so committed to making me remember that I was different and doing that in very nasty ways, um, I just feel like I have no option now but to be my whole self. And if people don't like it, then they can just fuck off, if I'm honest. I
Hmm.
don't mean to be rude, but um, you know, I'm not going to change. I want to wear bright colours and look silly and be.
Yes, I do as well. The older I get, the more bright colors I want to get. Absolutely, maximalism is the way to go.
I love being me. Not in an arrogant or narcissistic way, but I suffered so much to get to this point. I'm going to enjoy every last moment of it. So
Then I think of it as like being in love with myself, and that's where I sometimes wonder, like, am I a narcissist or something? Because I actually do think of it as being like a relationship where you love yourself, okay, but like you're in love with yourself as well. Like I'm gonna make time for my kids, I'm gonna make time for my partner, but actually in the same way, I'm gonna make time for me. I love me, I need to preserve me, I need to be healthy, things like that. And it only took almost dying to realize that actually, it might be an idea to preserve my well-being and my health because,
There's
that's
only one
important
thing
too.
completely irreplaceable. I feel similarly. I would describe my relationship with myself more like a friendship. Um, like if I catch myself saying negative things to myself, I think, would you say that to your friend? Would you say that to somebody that
Yeah.
you really love and care about? Probably not. But I think it's important that we make time for ourselves, especially in your case, being a mum. I imagine that you don't get much time to yourself having young children. And I feel like we live in a society that pressures us to be a certain way, and we're constantly bombarded with adverts about different ways of looking younger or thinner. And I think just making time to be yourself and to just be, and to not be producing anything or looking a certain way. Is this making any sense? I
Oh
just
yeah,
feel
100%.
like
Yeah.
it's quite a rebellious thing to just be yourself and to make time for yourself rather than just working yourself to the bone and worrying about what you look like all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like when you're younger, you do go through a phase of working yourself to the bone, and then you get to your 30s and you're like, who's this serving? And then you're like, fuck this. Your poems, Let the Blood Tell It and You Load the Gun in Anti-Hero and Chic have a brutality to them. I know you also said that you like brutalist architecture. What is it about brutality that attracts you, or did it just come out that way?
um, to be honest, for better or worse, I think my love of brutalist architecture comes from like a bit of a fetishization of Soviet aesthetics, which is probably problematic. Um, I love brutalist architecture for being just so grey and angular. Um, and I think that, like we were just talking about beauty, um, I think they're very stark and very beautiful. Brutalist buildings.
Hmm.
I kind of I don't think I think that's beautiful. I can't explain it in an adequate way, but there's just something really beautiful about Trellick Tower. That's probably my favourite piece of brutalist architecture in London. It's probably a very basic answer to give
No,
for
that's
what
true.
my favourite building is. I don't think things need to look conventionally beautiful to be beautiful.
Oh yeah, 100%. Have you seen that thing that's like a guy shocked to find that Manic Pixie Dream Girl is just a regular autistic girl? That's what this conversation is making me think of in both cases. Right. I feel like You Load the Gun also speaks to narcissistic abuse. Could you elaborate on this? It doesn't have to be personal.
That is what it was about. It was about a friendship that I had that was very very bizarre and very kind of intense, not in a romantic way or anything like that, but it got to the point where this person, the friendship that we had was falling into a pattern that I recognized as being very, very controlling. But those two poems I actually feel really ashamed of now. Now looking back, I don't think they're very good poems, and I've since then submitted other better poems to that magazine, and they haven't published them. Not that
I
I feel
can't get
entitled
into that magazine one
to have
day.
them published.
One day.
I don't feel entitled to take up space in anyone's publication, but it amazes me that they've published two of the shittiest poems I've ever written.
I
But
don't think they're shit, but I understand how you feel about them. Yeah.
I think because they remind me of the sort of toxic narcissistic person that they're about. Because
Yeah.
the person, he would bombard me with text messages, really
Um,
flattering kind of text messages about me and my work and my poetry and me as a person,
yeah.
and then would kind of like ghost me. And I think he was wanting me to text
Chase.
and kind of say, "Oh my God, what's happened? Have I upset you?" And I had reached a point in my life where I don't do that anymore. If you don't want to talk to me, then that's fine.
Yeah.
You have your own life. I have my own life. We don't need to text each other every hour of every day. That's quite a sort of codependent dynamic, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't even manage to text my friends once a month, but yeah, I know what you're saying. What do you think of the concept of narcissism in society? It seems to have blown up and become a buzzword. Do you think really there are so many narcissists, or do you think that people are describing other things?
I think people are sometimes describing other things. I think a lot of people who are described as narcissistic may actually be neurodiverse in some way. Not that
Yeah,
that
yeah.
isn't used to be abusive, because a lot of narcissistic people can behave in ways that are abusive. I think we describe a lot of people as narcissists, and I think that they probably exhibit narcissistic traits, but um, very few of them, I imagine, would actually meet the criteria to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not sure how many people are diagnosed with that because it seems like something that flies under the radar a lot. Um, and you're not going to be seeking psychiatric help if you have this image of yourself as being absolutely perfect and
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect in every way. You're not going to be going to a psychiatrist and going, "Oh, all of the people in my life are unhappy with the way that I'm treating them because I'm incapable of seeing anybody else as being as important as me." You're not. I don't know if narcissistic people have that self
That
awareness.
would be so curious to find out if a narcissist just went to a therapist, like my life's falling apart, but I don't know why because I'm perfect. And then maybe that would be step one.
But I
Um,
don't think we should. At the end of the day, it's a diagnosable mental health condition, so I kind of don't want to be really rude about people
yeah,
who
yeah,
have
100%.
mental
I don't want to take the piss. Yeah, and I do agree with what you say of it. Like, I think we also have to be, somewhat mindful of neurodiversity because it can manifest in ways that we may not always find palatable. In fact, that is the nature of it.
Yeah, and I've had experiences in my own life as a young person, not so much in recent years, but definitely as a teenager, because I was struggling to pick up on social cues and I was struggling to socialize and to behave in what you would consider a normal way as a teenager.
Mm.
I remember one of my friends said to me, because I was so anxious about how I was coming across to people, because I wasn't sure what I was doing or not doing that was making people find me weird. And I became kind of, yeah, quite obsessed with why don't people like me or what is it about me that people are finding so difficult to deal with? What is it about myself that I'm finding so difficult to deal with? And this girl I was friends with said, "Oh, you're so narcissistic. You're so obsessed with yourself." And I remember thinking, but I'm not. I'm just trying to understand why I am the way I am and why people find me weird.
Mm.
Um, I'm not friends with that person anymore. She actually ended up being just a colossally nasty person. And I was just too naive and probably too autistic to recognize that she used me as an emotional punch bag. So I don't think there was much truth in any of the things that she said to me because I think, um, she was a 15-year-old girl who had a terrible home life and she was just kind of trying to make herself feel better by criticizing me constantly,
Oh
which wasn't
yeah.
a very good dynamic. And I kind of wish I'd chosen a better friend at that time of my life because it wasn't a very nice
I
period.
like got to a weird point recently where I was like, okay, if I have no, not if I have no friendships, but if I have no something, then I can just avoid this whole situation of who's the narcissist, narcissistic abuse, and all the fallout that comes with it. But I don't think avoiding people's the way to do things. I think you have to just go through things and not worry. I don't know.
And I think it takes a lot of time to find people who you trust who won't behave like that. It's only in the last, yeah, I would say 5 to 10 years that I've made really, really lasting friendships. I'm still friends with a few people I went to school with and 3 people I was at university with. But most of my closest friends I've met in the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah, that's nice.
And, it reflects how you change and grow as a person.
I always think supportive friendships and in particular supportive female friendships just feel so incredible. Like I feel like if I've got three really close supportive female friends, I'll probably feel like I can take on the world. It just feels so amazing and it's just so affirming. But it's just having it's having those friends close by. I had my friend Hannah who was like a friend that lived close by and I felt really like supported. Like I've got people, if things go wrong, someone to talk to my feelings about. And now that I'm in Ramsgate, I'm a bit like zero friends again. I'm sure that I will Get along somehow. Keep on that app. Maybe I'll meet some cryptids.
I need to use it. I absolutely need
Please,
to.
please do. Honestly, I could have gone further, but I was like, this is as far as I am able to go. But yeah, some weird stuff. Where did the car poems come from?
So I think I wrote the first one when I was 17.
Mm,
It's about my friend Dave, who was giving me a lift home from college, I think.
mm.
And I just remember looking at him, looking at the road, and it was one of those moments where you look at somebody and you think, this is just a beautiful moment, and it's like a snapshot in my memory now, of watching him with the window wide open, and kind of his eyes watering a little bit because he was going quite fast and the wind was coming in, and making his eyes water. And I think that's what I love about poetry and art in general, is that it, for me, it's about noticing things that other people might not notice, noticing the beauty of things, and the beauty in people that's just there everywhere if you look for it. Um,
I
I
think
just
that's
I
very
like,
true.
because I don't drive. People give me lifts everywhere, and I've just started writing
That's
poems.
a nice life experience, when you don't drive and you get lifts or you get public transport. It changes the pace of life and it makes life a different thing, almost like I want to say like accidental, but not accidental, it allows for chance more, and I think that chance allows other things as well.
Yeah, and I think as much as I wish I could drive, and I'm on the in the process of learning to drive, I think about if I had learned to drive earlier, which I often kick myself for not doing. There are so many lovely conversations and lovely moments I've had with people in my life that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Um, and with so many different people, people I work with who've given me lifts places, um, friends from poetry events, my parents even. There are quite a few about my dad that I've written. Yeah, and we wouldn't have had those conversations or shared that time together, um, and sort of deepened our friendship or relationship or whatever if I hadn't been in their car talking to them. I feel like you get to know someone really well as well, when they're driving. I
And
don't know.
there's something about it. There's something sexy about it. There's something passive about it. And then there's something like, I don't know, I don't know. And then you're also kind of in someone's world. So I
Mm.
don't know, it's a good framework for exploring human interaction, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really, I love spending time with people and finding out what they're like. I don't really understand people on a lot of levels, so it's nice to spend time with them and get to know them more.
Hmm.
And it's nice to be on a journey as well.
Oh yeah,
That's
definitely.
that's
Yeah, yeah, always on a journey. Could you speak about your writing process?
yeah. So it's I don't write as much as I'd like to, because of the demands of my job and studying at the moment, but I tend to collect lines of poetry. Like a line will pop into my head or something like that, and I'll write it down. And then when I've got enough of them, I somehow sort of manage to Frankenstein them into being a poem.
I do that as well. Lines. Yeah, you are definitely a poet, like through and through. Yeah. You said all the things that like poets always say. Yeah. So yeah, I get the lines as well. Could you tell me a bit about your academic writing? How do you go about it and how's it different to poetry? Because I've always thought I'd like to get into it, but I feel like I'm not really very good at it. So how does that come to you?
I love researching things, so that helps. I love collating information and learning about things. Um, so my academic work, I've always really enjoyed the process of writing it and gathering together lots of different strands of information from different sources and working them together to make the point that I'm trying to make. To me, that comes quite naturally, and not to bang on about it, but being autistic, I feel like that's a very autistic trait, having that ability to just tunnel vision into something and have that urge to know everything about it. I wish that I wrote more academic work now. I don't. I think about things a lot, and I think I would love to write an essay about that. Or
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I think about the connections between things, and I think that would be a really interesting thing to write a thesis about. Um, and I'd love to write more about what I did my master's thesis about, because now
That'd be really interesting.
president again, it's even more relevant. And I don't think memes ever stopped being relevant in the time since I wrote that. So, um, but the process is very different to poetry because it's less about picking out details and things and noticing things. Bless you.
Thank you.
Um, and it's more about making a point. I feel like my poetry doesn't try and make a point. It just is. It's just there, and it's. This is something I was talking to David and John McCulloch about. Actually, we were saying about how poetry is like the failure of language to fully express our emotional inner lives. There's a gap between what you feel and what you think about people,
Mm.
uh, and and how you express it. And poetry is like that gap in between those two things, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I did think recently to myself, it'll be interesting to write about conspiracies, or it'd be interesting to think, okay, the end point of a conspiracy is thinking that things aren't real to the point that even I could think that I'm not real. Like I am a program that's convinced myself that everything is not real, but I am actually also a function of the greater conspiracy. So the problem with the conspiracy is that the conspiracy never ends. And I just thought that would be like an interesting essay, but I never really write them out.
We should do it. We should
Yeah.
make a point of writing these things down and doing something with them because there's so much meat on the bones of that idea that I would love to explore.
What do you think of conspiracy culture, and do you think it's taken over?
I find it baffling, and I think it's tempting sometimes to say, "Oh, those people are just stupid." But there are plenty of people who are rational, intelligent people who fell for this idea that COVID isn't real and that it's a government conspiracy. And I think it's become in our culture, it's become a thing to poke fun at. But it's dangerous. There are so many people who are just constantly on social media, constantly doing research on YouTube and watching crazy videos and taking everything they read as fact. And I find that very unsettling to think about. And I find the same with cults, actually. I find cults really interesting because there are people who are part of cults, and you would look at them and think, how did you get sucked into this? Because it's so very obvious that it's, you know, something that's not good for you,
Hmm.
brain, for your well-being, for your sense of self. But people do, and I think it gives people that sort of sense of identity and belonging, and that feeling that the world's chaos, but I've got it right, guys. Like,
Yeah.
and
Control, yeah.
you feel you have control over something that's quite scary because COVID was a scary time for everyone. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I think I'm in the minority of people who found it quite. I quite enjoyed not having to go anywhere or see anyone. That was
I was out
exciting.
looking for witches, so I was fine.
I mean, probably would have been a better use of my pandemic time than
Yeah.
what I was actually doing. But uh, yeah, I think it gives people that false sense of control, and I think that we do ourselves and conspiracy theorists a disservice when we just laugh it off and say that they're stupid because they're not. They're just looking for things in the wrong places. Maybe I'm
Hmm.
not a conspiracy theorist myself, but I feel I don't mean this to sound patronising, but I feel a bit sorry for people who are because I think you've obviously at some point just fallen down a rabbit hole and it's really difficult to climb out of that. And it's difficult to admit that you're wrong about something, especially when
Yeah,
you're
oh yeah.
surrounded by people who are part of your online community who are saying, yeah, you're really right about that. And they're just reinforcing those views all the time.
Yeah, on a similar but different point, I think any community that you're in, and if that is your friends are in there, your family is in there, your identity is wrapped up in it, it is always hard to break away from that in the face of something that you know is wrong. And I think sometimes that's underestimated.
Mm. It is difficult, especially if you know that you're going to lose family or friends in the process,
Yeah.
um, because they've maybe your cult or organization has a policy of where if somebody leaves, you're not allowed to talk to them. I think that's quite common in a lot of cults and
Hmm.
communities that are very strict about things like that.
Yeah.
Which just yeah.
And girl friendship groups, pretty much the same. What what do you think is the balance between activism and peace?
What do you mean by that?
Like we all do a bit of activism, but we all want our space, our peace of mind. We don't want to do it to the point where it ruins our lives. And do you think that there's a way of balancing the two? Because I know I have felt very disbalanced and I've had to relook at some situations and think, okay, well, maybe it's not worth throwing some of my friendships down the toilet over activism, or maybe it is. And I'm still deciding.
That's really tough, especially when you have a job and you have to make ends meet. Because
Yeah.
there are plenty of things that I would love to do, um, and plenty of causes that I believe in really strongly that I'm not able to commit as much time to as I'd like because I work full time, and also if I get arrested and have a criminal record, I'll lose my job. And I enjoy my job. I never thought I'd ever say that. I never thought I'd be one of those people who really enjoys what they do for a living, but I really do, and I feel quite attached to doing what I do and seeing
Really?
it through. So, but I mean, there are some things I think about a lot, like because of or the election of lots of reform councillors in Kent. Kent County Council are no longer flying the Pride flag for Pride Month in June, and there was a huge part of me that thought about using all of my annual leave to just stand outside KCC with like a giant pride flag or something, just to be a real pain in the arse, um, because I think they deserve it. Not, I don't think sort of tokenistic gestures like that are the be all and end all of supporting the LGBT community, but I just think it's just crazy that one of the first things they said they'd stop doing is flying the pride flag. It's such a simple gesture of solidarity, and you can't even do that because you're all so right wing that I just it baffles me.
And that's their priority. If you think how much poverty there is in Kent, if you think how much crime there is in Kent, if you think how much litter doesn't get collected in Kent, we have so many problems here, and their main focus is the pride flag. It just goes to show that these political things sometimes for them are purely ideological, for want of a better word, and they don't actually care about any material reality, which is what they're there for. They're there for changing our material reality for the better.
Mm. Unfortunately, I think it's got to the point now where people it's like in America with Trump and Elon Musk cutting all of the funding for
That's
DEI.
fucked, yeah.
It's just like people hear these buzzwords and they think, oh, this person is addressing this bad thing, but they've never actually stopped to think about why it's bad. They've just been told that it's bad. So um,
Someone just needs to go up to Elon Musk when he's on stage and just be like, just no, and just drag him away, and then he's never allowed out in public again. Just, sorry, no, and then that's just it.
I
Like,
just don't think anyone should have that much money and influence. I think it's
no,
just so wrong that people
it's
get to that point where they are able to influence so many people, um, and just it just becomes like a soundbite that's not. It's just so far removed from reality. I'm sure I read the other day that the amount of money he claims to have saved from cutting DEI, whatever that means, it's such a vague saying, was actually not. None of that money was spent where he says it was being spent. It's
probably
just
all
a
went back into Tesla. You know what? He's the guy's the lunatic. But it does feel like we live in very strange times. Feels very strange to me. It feels like it's easily changeable, feels like it's prone to extremism, it feels like it's prone to chaos and terror. It feels like it's open to everything we've ever believed being different. I don't know. Does it feel very strange to you?
It does, and I think it feels like a time where art and poetry is even more necessary as a way of communicating those feelings and of challenging our situation. Um, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if art and poetry can ever be apolitical, because I
No.
think when you're making art, it's always influenced by the context that it's created in, by the time that you're living in, um,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you can't get away from that. And yeah, I think it's our job to speak to those things and
Mm.
not influence people, but get people to think about things more.
Yeah,
I'm not
definitely.
sure how poems about being in people's cars affects that, but
It
uh,
does.
it's that. But maybe I'm just trying to think of some like art degree bullshit that I can say about what it communicates, but how important interpersonal relationships are,
And journeys.
and how much we shouldn't isolate ourselves from each other, because it's really easy to just work really hard all the time and be alienated from life and from the people in your life. So
That's very true. How much does music inspire you?
a lot, yeah. I often write to music or paint to music. And when I was younger, I went through a phase, sorry, of making artwork based on pieces of music and writing poems based on pieces of music,
Mm, I like
um,
that.
and the feelings that they made me have. I don't do that so much anymore, but I am always listening to music wherever I am,
I,
whatever.
I I do like writing poetry about pieces of art. There's what's that called? Is it called ekphrastic?
Ekphrastic poetry,
Yeah,
yeah, it comes from a Greek word, but I don't know what the Greek word is. Ekphrasis, maybe.
maybe, yeah. I'm trying a different room because it's a Sunday and I wanted to get away from my family. But that bell keeps going and scaring me, but I'm sure it'll be okay. Do you consider yourself spiritual at all?
This came up last night. Actually, I was at a poetry event in Surrey near Canterbury, and one of my fellow poets. The three of us read poems, and then there was an interval, and then there was a kind of Q&A session afterwards. And one of the ladies I was reading with is a priest, and she was saying that when she writes poetry, she feels like she's communicating with something bigger than herself. And I really feel that too. I don't believe in God. I don't really consider myself to be overly spiritual, but when I paint or write, I do feel like I'm communicating with some. I don't want to call it a higher power because I don't believe that exists, but I feel like I'm communing with something, or I'm tapping into something that's much bigger and older than I am.
Yeah.
Not a kind of being, if that makes sense, but I don't know, a consciousness that I share with other artists and poets. Um, I would like to explore more my interest in folklore and myths,
Yes.
legends. I have quite a big interest in the history of magic in England, and where I grew up in the West Country, there are a lot of local myths and legends that are, very pagan. I can't really do
Mm.
justice right now, but and I find all of those myths very interesting, and where they come from and how they've been told and retold over the years. So I
Yeah.
suppose I'm not spiritual, but I have an interest in the occult and in witchcraft and magic and things like that.
Oh yeah, you should definitely start practicing witchcraft, especially if it interests you and if you have that kind of temperament where you like to work to a discipline. Because when I started trying it, I was surprised at how effective it was. Like we we did this one, like like witch talk. It's like really cheesy, but I love it. Like we
Mm.
did this one where like me and my sister opened all the doors and windows and we lit a candle and we said like if there's any negative beings in this house, um leave now, and then we blew out the candle. We were like, oh, okay, that's fun. Then we just sat down and watched the movie. She went to work. I had a nap before work. There was no one else in the house. And so this is the back of the sofa. This is me lying down and I felt and I'm like, what? And then I felt and then I woke up. But honestly, like I would say to anyone, like, don't knock it until you try it because
Mm.
it gets freaky very fast. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I definitely have a huge interest in it, and I've read quite a lot about it, um, and know quite a few people who are interested in
Yeah.
magic and craft. But yeah, it's not something I've ever consciously done. Other than I don't know if thinking about things can be considered a form of witchcraft, but I definitely I don't feel like I think things into being. I feel like I'm definitely prone to some forms of magical thinking. Um,
Mm.
like I can't even describe it. It's just something that I feel very connected with the idea of rituals, and for
Mm.
me, writing sometimes feels like a ritual as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, like,
about it.
is it communion is a ritual? Is it marriage is a ritual?
Mm.
So that's kind of interesting. Do you think you would like to put out a collection at some point? And do you think putting out a collection is even the most impactful, valid form of communicating poetry now?
I would like to. I think I've definitely got enough poems that are on the same kind of topic that they would work well as a collection. I just don't know how to go about getting a book published, really. And I've got so many zines that I've made. I've got two, and one of them is just a kind of, it's collages of different photographs with my poems handwritten over them. And then I made one which I wrote after Sarah Everard went missing,
Mm.
um, and then was later found. It's not about her, but it's kind of about missing and murdered women, and how we sensationalize that in the media. And kind of like I was saying about Susannah Dickey's book, is our interest in true crime okay to have? Is it a healthy interest to have? Because it's such a we really just fetishize dead women. That's the only way I can think of to describe it. And I think I need to get those out there before I release a collection of poetry, because I feel like I'm sitting on so many artistic projects at the moment that I need to put out into the world before I move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And on the true crime thing, I know that there was a lot of condemnation about the Jeffrey Dahmer one as well, because it kind of rehashed him as sexy or something, or and there's definitely that problem of representation. Have you read I can't remember what the book's called now, but that book by Susan Sontag about war photography, and it's kind of quite topical at the moment, and she just talks about the effect of photographing and what photographing means, how it changes your perceptions and stuff, and it just goes into it in a way that I never could, but it pretty much sums up like all the things you would have about the problems of misrepresenting an actual person that's been through something for a little true crime bit.
I need to look into that, because that sounds like something that would interest me as well. I've quite a big interest in that kind of topic.
Yeah.
I've consumed a lot of true crime material, podcasts and books, and probably one of the best true crime books I've ever read was Happy Like Murderers by Gordon Byrne, which is about Fred and Rose West. And I think the reason for me it's not a sensational true crime book. It almost reads like a piece of literary fiction, and the way that he writes about Fred and Rose West is just as creepy and disgusting as the things that they did. And I find that stands out for me as a piece of work which is based on true crime, because it almost the way that he writes is just disgusting. That's the only way, like, not in a disrespectful way towards the victims of Fred and Rose West, but the way that he writes makes your skin absolutely crawl. And I think it's a piece of art then, because it's doing something to you. It's not, oh, isn't it gross that he had dismembered women under his patio? Because I feel like people find those details really like tantalizing. People want to know about these disgusting things that were done. But this book more talks about their upbringings and what led them to do what they did. I don't know if that makes it more or less valid for me to have read it and enjoyed it. Enjoyed is maybe not the right word, but and I feel the same way about all of the pictures of dead Palestinian children that I'm seeing on social media. It feels like wrong that I should be seeing these things.
Yeah, well, and it's also and I fall into it as well, because it's like you want to share because you want to people to know, and but you want to respect the dignity of that child who's had that thing happen to them. But because of the what's happening with Palestinians at the moment, yeah, it's called Regarding the Pain of Others by Susan Sontag,
Write that down. Thank you.
and it sums the whole discussion up. At the end of the day, it's almost, is it fetishization to share, or it just goes into everything. And I've definitely had my guilt about things like that. And I'm also just trying to think like, what is the best way of proceeding forward? So, yes.
I hate how if you say something even as benign and inoffensive as, I don't think children should be killed in this brutal way anywhere on the planet, but here it's happening right now, and I don't think that should be happening. I've had so many people say, oh well, Hamas would behead you, and it's like, I'm not saying that I love Hamas or something, but
Yeah.
I just hate how people throw that out there as like a way of dismissing what you're saying, which is that killing children is bad, which I feel like is not a controversial or should not be a controversial thing to say. Um, oh, Hamas would stone you. Your friends who are gay would be thrown off buildings. And I'm thinking that I'm not condoning that. I'm
I
not
don't
saying
know
that.
if it was on that one point. I don't know if it was Hamas that did that. Not that Hamas are great, by the way.
I
I
think it
hate
was
Hamas.
ISIS. I remember reading about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know if it was Islamic State or if it was Hamas, but I think the misunderstanding, let's hope it's a misunderstanding, is that we think this our slogan isn't Hamas are good. Our slogan is killing children in the tens of thousands is bad. So
Yeah.
there's a real difference between the two.
And also, it kind of, what are you trying to say? Like, are you trying to say that brown people can't be queer? Because that's obviously a ridiculous standpoint to have.
I think that is the
Um,
standpoint, though. I honestly do think that that's sometimes the standpoint.
Being queer is not just for white.
Yeah.
And I find that such a bizarre counter to saying that killing children is bad. I've lost count of the amount of people who have posted on social media about how I think it's just this mental gymnastics people try to do to justify it to themselves, because it is a really horrible thing. And I don't remember the last time I logged on to Instagram for my daily allotted 30 minutes usage of it and saw, and didn't see like pieces of somebody's dismembered body, because that's what people are posting on social media. Um,
Yeah.
and to cope with that horrible reality, people do sort of contort themselves into these um, like mental pretzels of trying to justify it. That's how it feels to me. But why bring queer people into it?
Yeah, and also why it's very disingenuous if you're someone on the right who has always been negative towards queer people to then try and use it in an argument against Palestinians. It's just that, but I do find the counter argument of if that is at that side just so deeply disingenuous that I just don't think that they believe what they're saying. So then I think, oh, why should I engage? Because you are so deeply disingenuous.
Mm. And I think it's one of those issues, like I said at the start, about how it's okay to say I don't know anything about that,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to comment. I think more people could do with not commenting on the issue, because at the end of the day, how much can we really understand it living in this country? All the books
Yeah.
I've read about it doesn't mean I understand it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
exactly.
and I think more people could just do with shutting up.
I do as well. And recently, one of my things of like dealing with that has been like, okay, rather than spending all my time on social media, which seems to be what everyone's doing, and we're all getting stressed, why don't I take time away and educate myself? If I'm away and I'm studying and I'm reading and I'm trying to better myself, I'm still contributing. Maybe I'm not on social media saying and doing things, which I will be to an extent, but I'm still making a positive difference by taking time to actually learn rather than just speak all the time.
Yeah, and I think more people could do that on a variety of topics. I think people could do with learning a bit more and being okay with being wrong about things.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure I'm never uh, right about everything that
I'm
have
sure
an
I'm
opinion
not.
or
Yeah.
speak about, and it's quite freeing actually to be okay with acknowledging that.
Yeah. I feel like it's been a very positive chat with you today, and you've made me feel good about things.
I feel the same way. I wish I could just talk to you all day. That'd be really
I know,
fun.
it'd be nice. It's just always those friendships when you're like, oh, I wish I saw them more, but they're nice whenever you do manage to catch up on them. Well, it's been absolutely delightful speaking to you today, and I will edit all the, the ums and ahs and things, and then I will put it out and it will be lovely.
Amazing, thank you. Can you stop the recording and can we just have a chat afterwards?
Yeah, yeah, I can do, yeah, because that's all right. I'm gonna stop it now. Okay, yeah, there we go. Cool. Bye.